Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Happy Knitting Podcast. My name is Julia and I'm coming to you from Germany. Today is, what is it? It is a Friday, the 29th of December 2017. So this will be the last episode of this podcast in this year. If you're celebrating Christmas or the holidays, I hope you had a wonderful time with your loved ones, your family. I hope that you got some maybe yarny Christmas gifts and just generally had a nice sort of holiday away from the daily life sort of things. I'm so glad you're joining me today. If this is your first time watching, welcome. I'm so glad you're trying this podcast, and if you're coming back, thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it. I especially want to thank all of you who commented on my last two videos. Thank you so much for your lovely words. They really did mean a lot. So I'm recording this once again sort of in between things. Sorry, this is not very knitting related, but I'm just going to get it out of the way now. So we celebrated Christmas. We first drove up to my parents' house and then up to Kai's parents' house, which is in the north of Germany. Then back to my parents, and now we have just arrived back in Munich, where we live. And we're only going to be staying here for a couple of hours before going on our next trip. So we're having a couple of hours long stopover at our apartment, which is why I'm recording this podcast right now. And then we will be away for another week or so. So that is, for example, why I'm not wearing any makeup, because everything is packed away, and quite frankly, it is the holidays, I'm not working, and I just don't really care right now. So with that out of the way, let's have some tea and get started with the knitting. I'm still using Christmas mugs, obviously, because why not? So I have a couple of finished objects. The first finished object that I have to show you today is on my head, and it is this hat. I'm not going to take it off, but it is a hand-spun yarn that I spun up about 2 years ago, I think. I know it is from Fond & Fibre, who is in the UK, and it was some sort of fancy blend with a couple of different sort of sheep breeds and I think silk in it. And back then I spun it into a singles yarn, into a fingering weight single yarn, and then I don't know why I spin fine yarn to then knit a double, but I held a double, so I had approximately a worsted weight yarn, and I knit myself a hat out of it. So all I did was a simple 2x2 brim. I think I cast on something like 88 stitches. And then I used the texture pattern from Hermione's Everyday Socks, which is a sock pattern, a free sock pattern by Erika Lüder. And I just really like the sort of knit and purl texture, and I wanted something simple but not stockinette. So I made this hat just in time for Christmas because I knew we were going to go to the Christmas markets, and I wanted a nice cozy hat. And that's exactly what this is. So sadly, no pattern for this, just a simple hat. I used 6mm needles. I have no idea what that is in US sizes, but it's done and I really like it. I recently looked at all of my hand spun that is sort of stashed away, and I decided that I want to knit with it some more. So that's why this time I lean towards this one. The next finished object that I have, I can't show you because it already lives with my sister and it's probably on her feet right now. And that is a pair of socks. I have the label with me to show you, and I'll put in some photos somewhere here. But it's one of Regia's perfect yarns, which gives you sort of two matching perfect socks. So you have the white on the cuff, the heel, and the toe. Except for my sister, because she has really tiny feet, the yarn worked out in a way that she didn't actually get any white toes. I finished her toes before I even reached the white at the bottom, but I really don't care. They turned out really pretty. The cutaway is number 9137, and I will talk more about this yarn later in the podcast, because I am somewhat obsessed with Regia, Arne, and Carlos, it seems. But yeah, so that is done. For my sister, I cast on 56 stitches for the ribbing, which on these socks is quite long, because you knit as long as you have the white. So that turned into a very long ribbing, and then I knit the rest of the sock over 60 stitches. And the funny thing is, usually, obviously, you use less yarn for smaller socks. But because I wanted to follow the pattern and do the heel where it was supposed to be in the yarn, the socks turned out pretty long, which I think is really fun, and I really don't mind. But keep that in mind if you do want to knit these perfect socks for people who have short feet. The legs are going to be relatively long. So I'll put in some photos, and that'll be that. My next finished object is still wet because I just blocked it, and I completely forgot to show this on my last podcast episode. I don't know what was going on, but I realized after I had uploaded the entire podcast episode, I had just left this whip in my bag. So I finished it now, and these are some socks for myself. These are knit out of a sock blank by Hedgerow Yarns, who is another UK-based dyer, and I'm not sure what I'm doing. So it was a single strand sock blank. It didn't have a name. I think it was called number 7 or something. And it was in her merino nylon blend. And I just knit vanilla socks. And as you can see, they're quite long because they're actually too long for my sock blockers. So I knit a very long leg, all stockinette. And then I put in, for these ones, I put in afterthought heels. And the yarn that I used for the afterthought heel is by my friend Kim, who has Golden Yarns, also on Etsy. And I just thought, I didn't want to interrupt sort of the patterning of the sock blank. And I think they turned out really nice. You can see that this one is almost all like with green speckles, which is a little bit sad. It went back to the red just as I was kitchening the toe. And they're sort of fraternal socks, but I do think they're very fun, and you know how much I love knitting from sock blanks. So yeah, these were knit on 64 stitches on my usual US size 1 or 2.25 millimeter needle. And they're still wet, so I don't know, I don't think I'm going to be taking them on a holiday. I think I will leave them here to dry and then have them when we get back from our next trip. Where should I put them? Because they're still wet. Let's see. And my last finished object I talked about in detail last week, and that's those mitts, or these mitts. They're called the How Cold Is It mittens. It's a pattern by Drunk Girl Designs, and last week I talked about them in detail. I was only missing one thumb, which I have since knitted, and I will show the back now. If you're easily offended, please look away. This is what they look like. Obviously they have writing on them, but I have worn these a ton. They have been so useful for Christmas markets and our walks, like over the holidays. And because I've been wearing them so much and then stuffing them into my pockets, and someone may have spilled mulled wine all over them, they are in bad shape. So they do need to be reblocked very badly. But I have really, really been enjoying wearing these. The yarn is Drops Flora. I talked about the colorways last week as well because there were some kind of numbers. But yeah, now they are officially done. And that is it for my finished objects. I didn't think I was going to have any, and somehow I turned out quite a few. So now I will talk about works in progress. In here I have my Christmas Eve cast on, which I did following the tradition of Danny, who has the Little Bobbins podcast. And this one is going to be hard to show you guys. But the yarn that I'm using, first of all, is a self-striping yarn by Jinx Yarn, which I'm so happy to have gotten in a stash. Jinx Yarn is located in the US, and this is her Magical Girl colorway on her 80/20 merino nylon blend. And I didn't want to do a completely plain vanilla sock, so what I did was a ribbed sock. So I started with a 2x2 rib and then knit the sock over a 6x2 rib. So knit 6, purl 2, knit 6, purl 2, and so on. So I did that all around the foot, all around the leg of the sock, and then for the bottom of the feet I swapped over to just stockinette. And the reason why this is hard to show you guys is because I am knitting the heel and I'm also knitting the toe. So that's why there are 2 needles and 2 yarns attached, and it is somewhat hard to show. So I chose to do an afterthought heel on these ones, but what I'd like to do, especially with the stripes, is I finish the heel before I put in the toe to make sure that their socks fit. So because I'm relatively close to starting the toe here, this morning I picked up the stitches and started knitting on my afterthought heel, for which I always use the heel by Kirby Werby. She has a sock tutorial on YouTube. And then we had to actually leave before I could finish it, so that's why it's somewhat hard to show, but very soon this sock will have a heel and a toe, and it will be much easier and much prettier to show you guys. But these colors are stunning, aren't they? I absolutely love these. It is my first time knitting with Jinx yarn, because it's one of those yarns that is generally very unattainable for me. And I really, really, really love it. I also really love the base, and this has just been a pure joy to knit. And I actually knit the first half of this sock on Christmas Eve, like underneath the Christmas tree, and then yesterday at my family we once again turned up the Christmas music and lit the candles on a tree. So basically all of this has been knit under the Christmas tree, which is perfect, and that will definitely always sort of have this Christmas memory attached to it. So yeah, very happy about these socks. Yeah, I really should just finish the heel, because that's something I tend to do lately, is I start heels and then I put them away again, and it becomes so much more difficult. But oh well. And this bag is by Mina, of a knitting expat from back when she used to make bags, and I won this in one of her giveaways, or knit-alongs, I think. Alright, next work in progress. In here I have another sock for one of my sisters, the other one obviously, and this is also a colorway by Regia in their Arne and Carlos Perfect range. I'm somewhat obsessed with these at the moment. It's another one where you have a really fun pattern and the yarn basically does all of the work for you. And this one I think has been quite popular a couple of weeks back, or maybe around Halloween. So this is what the finished socks are going to look like. This is the label. It comes with an instruction sheet on how to do it. And this is colorway number 9093. And this one should be easy to find, because I think it's the only one that is these crazy colors. So I cast these on for my sisters. Again, I did 56 stitches for the ribbing and then switched to 60 stitches for the leg. And again, you can see the leg is relatively long. And last night I turned the heel, so now I just have to knit the foot and then the second sock. What else should I say about these? I did a review about Regia a couple of weeks back, so you can check that out if you're interested in that. But these yarns have definitely sort of reinforced my love of Regia. I talked about how their quality sometimes changes, at least that's what I have experienced. But both of the balls that I've recently knit with have been really, really good quality, and like these colors just make it so much fun. Like I really enjoy especially these sort of irregular changes in pattern. I think they're super fun, and just these colors are so unusual and they're so vibrant and bright, and yeah, I really, really enjoy these. The needles that I'm using for these are Adi, which I basically never use for socks, but they're the Adi Premiums. And they were essentially the last sock needles that I had. So I'm going to finish these socks on these, just because I don't like switching my needles while in the middle of a project. But you all know my favorites are definitely Higher Sharps and Chaogu Red Lace. Although there is absolutely nothing wrong with these, I just like the slightly sharper needles. So that is my sister's sock. And I put that back in here. And for these, in case you're interested, just for ease of traveling, I tend to cake up my yarns, even like the ones that are in big sort of commercial balls. I just think that they're annoying to handle, and this way you have a center pull ball and you can just pull from your project bag, and it's just a tiny bit easier. My last work in progress is, of course, also another pair of socks. And let's get a sock blocker. I have finished one sock, and this is again very special yarn. This yarn is yarn that my friend Hazel sent to me. She is dyeing yarn and possibly opening a yarn dyeing business at some time in the future. And she sent me, this is quite a while ago, she sent me some beautiful MCN yarn that she had dyed for me. And it was sitting in my stash for a while because I didn't want to be using it for socks, but then at some point I just decided that rather than waste this beautiful yarn and have it sit in my stash, I'll just knit a pair of socks out of it, and they will be some very luxurious sort of bed socks for myself. So you can see I have finished one sock, and isn't this colorway just beautiful? So this is another vanilla sock. For these ones I went down from my usual 64 stitches to 60 stitches because the yarn is very plump. And it's just so beautiful. I really, really love this. So it's a merino, nylon and cashmere blend, and the speckling and just the feel of the yarn is just amazing. I think these actually, they feel quite durable, so I'm very, very, very curious to see how they will wear. But this yarn was such a joy to knit. I really, really enjoyed it. So what I need to do is cast on the second one because I just finished the first one, kitchen at the toe, and then never worked on it again. So I should do that sometime soon. But thank you again, Hazel, for sending me this beautiful yarn. I'm definitely really, really enjoying it. And that is it for my works in progress. So before we go into acquisitions and just general life stuff and knitting plans, of which I have a couple, I just really wanted to quickly talk about the knit along that we have running at the moment, which is the Challenge Cow 2017 edition. The idea was to challenge yourself with something like a new technique, a new method of knitting, something that you haven't done before. And it was the second time running this knit along, and that ends on the 31st of December. So please get your finished objects in, and I will close the thread on the 1st of January. If it's not closed, feel free to enter, but I will try to close it on time. So please get your finished objects in before then, and I will draw the prizes for that in the next episode, which will be in the first week of towards the end of the first week of January. I really enjoyed running this knit along again. My challenges this year have definitely been focused on color work, knitting, stranded color work, and I've really, really learned so much and enjoyed it so much. And I feel like I might not have tried that so quickly if it hadn't been for this knit along. So I hope you guys had a lot of fun. I'm thinking we might be doing the same thing again next year sometime. The only thing I think I'll do differently is a couple of people were doing like a challenge to knit something in a like speed knit or knit a couple of finished objects in a certain time frame, and that wasn't really the idea that I had, but that is totally fine. If you were one of those people, please don't worry. I just think we will fine-tune this for next year, and thank you so much for everyone who have participated. If you have, please make sure to watch the next episode because, as you know, I will redraw prizes if the prize winners don't get in touch within a couple of weeks. So, with that, let's move on to acquisitions. I have one acquisition, but a big one. So I wasn't really buying any yarn, obviously, because we were traveling, but then we were in Hanover, which is somewhat in the north of Germany, at least if you're coming from Bavaria. And we were obviously spending a lot of time with family, and somewhat spontaneously I decided to take a little detour, have a little me time and go visit a local yarn store there. The store that I went to is called Wollkultur, and I've been there before, and I remember that I really liked it. It's a small-ish but not tiny yarn store, and they had a really nice sort of selection of yarns. So I took a little trip by myself and I had so much fun there. I really like going to yarn stores by myself sometimes. I'm not sure if you guys do this, but when you go to a yarn store with other people, it's always really fun, but you have this pressure to decide rather quickly. So going by myself, it was just so nice because I took my time. I was probably there for like 45 minutes, just thinking about sweaters and colorways and yarns and patterns. And the lady there was really helpful without being sort of overbearing, which sometimes people tend to do. And I just had so much fun. So I picked out the perfect sweater quantity for a new sweater project and walked home. And it was just a really nice sort of little detour trip away from the family, as much as I did love that, of course. So the yarn that I picked out is this one. It's a commercial yarn brand I have never tried before. It is called Gaisk. Let's see where this is from. Does it say where it's from? Origin Australia and Turkey. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? So this is the yarn, and it is a wool and cotton blend. And you know, I don't really love knitting with cotton, but the thing is, with sweaters, I think, like lightweight sweater-wise, something like this would be really, really handy to have in my wardrobe. So this is shade C25, and this is the one that I originally wanted to knit my sweater out of, but they only had one ball in stock, which was a little sad. So I picked a different color for my sweater. I picked this one, which is the same yarn. It is shade C33. And I really like this one as well. Both of them are sort of heathered, and they feel really, really nice. You don't really feel the cotton content, and they feel very light as well. It's a very light fingering weight yarn. It is 232 meters per 50 grams. And I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do. So what I did is I got 5 skeins of this colorway, so I could either make just a sweater in this yarn and be done with it, or I could do a colorwork yoke. And I talked to the lady in the store, and she thought that 1 skein of this should definitely be enough to do some sort of colorwork on either the yoke of the sweater or maybe like the ribbing or something. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but I do think these colors look really, really pretty together. So definitely excited about these, and they were actually very reasonably priced. I'm really enjoying trying different and new to me commercial yarns these days for sweaters, because as much as I love indie dyed yarn, sometimes something else is more suitable, and sometimes merino is not always the best choice for sweaters. So yeah, very, very excited about this purchase, and they had so many other nice things that I could have bought, so very happy about this. So that's my only acquisition, and since we're going away, I thought I'd quickly talk to you guys about another project that I'm planning on casting on very soon, possibly tonight. And that, like, another project that I'm taking with me on a trip, obviously, and that is this yarn. This yarn has been in my stash for a while, and this is She Bought Arne. I'll just take it out. Who is a German-based indie dyer who I've talked about and bought from many times. This is their logo, and way back when I got a sock trio, I think they called it, they had a fade set of 3 skeins of yarn. And it turned out I had a 4th skein of yarn in my stash that somewhat matched. So I decided to keep those together and knit some sort of faded sweater out of it. And I randomly decided over Christmas that I wanted to knit a faded boxy sweater. I think that would be really fun. It's not necessarily a business sweater, which I know I've talked about focusing on, but I just really want to have some fun. So I think I'm going to use these 4 skeins of merino sock yarn to make myself a faded boxy sweater or something very similar to that. These 3 are the ones that were in the set. So I'm considering using these 3 for the body, probably this way around, and then just using the 4th one for the sleeves. That's what I'm thinking right now, but I might change my mind. But this one does have quite a lot more like purple, so I'm not quite sure if this will work, but I think this will be really fun, and fading the colors will keep my mind off the boring stockinette part of the sweater, or maybe I do some sort of texture. But these are going to be wound up pretty much as soon as I finish recording this. Besides that, I'm obviously going to take lots of yarn for sock projects, As you might have seen, I've been doing quite a bit of gift knitting, which has been fun, but I'm looking forward to just casting on all the things because I finally can, and it's kind of going to be finally like just time for me and Kai, so I'll have lots of knitting time and podcast watching time and catching up on my favorite series, and I'm super excited about that. I'm considering taking both sweater quantities, both this one and this one, but maybe that'll be a bit too much. I'm not quite sure. I'm also planning to at least once, if not more than once, go to my favorite yarn store down there, which is in Kempten. It is called Wollparadies, and they have really beautiful yarn. So essentially I'm just planning to knit my heart out and knit as much as I possibly can, and that is very exciting. So that's pretty much it. So I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to say thank you so much for watching. I love hearing from you guys in the Ravelry group on YouTube, on Instagram. Please follow me there if you want to be caught up. And until I see you again, have a wonderful end of the year and Happy New Year. And I look forward to spending another knitty year with you guys in 2018. Thanks again and happy knitting. Bye.